Good morning. Thank you for joining us today for this power lunch with Saskatoon Mayor Charlie Clark. My name is Henry Witrago. I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager at the Saskatoon Chamber of Commerce. This event, as many of the ones that we host, is going to be recorded for sharing later on social media. If you have any questions, please send it through private message to our Director of Policy and Government Relations, Marco Orr. Now, to host today's event, here's the Saskatoon Chamber of Commerce CEO, Jason Abeg.
Well, good day, everyone. Welcome. Good to see you all. I'm Jason Abeg. I'm CEO of the Greater Saskatoon Chamber. It's a pleasure to welcome you all here today. The Chamber team and many of you are participating today from Treaty 6 territory in the traditional homeland of the Métis people. As a Chamber, we're committed to growing a Saskatoon rooted in shared success, respectful relationships, and true reconciliation. And if you're joining us from other parts of the province today on other territorial lands, a warm welcome to you and thanks for being here. It's my pleasure to thank today's Power Lunch sponsors, our promoting sponsors, CN and Campotex, and our partner sponsors, Par Auto Body, McClelland DeBoucher Chartered Accountants. Thank you very much for your support of these Power Lunch events. We couldn't do it without you. And before we get started, I'd like to recognize the following elected officials who are joining us on today's call. We have Ken Shoveldayoff, who's MLA for Saskatoon Willow Grove. We have Hilary Goff, who represents Ward 2 on Saskatoon City Council. David Curtin from Ward 3. Randy Donauer from Ward 5. Cynthia Block, who's councillor for Ward 6. Serena Gershert, who's councillor for Ward 8. Bev Dubois, representing Ward 9. And Zach Jeffries, who represents Ward 10. Thank you all for being with us today. Okay, let's get started. It's been wow, isn't this an understatement? It's been quite a year for our city. When COVID arrived on the scene in early 2020, no one really knew how to respond and what its impact might be. Major projects were underway and many of our city's key priorities and plans were in motion when the world stopped in its tracks and government leaders were required to respond to the crisis and simultaneously find a way forward. Locally, this required Mayor Charlie Clark and City Council to take steps to secure the safety of municipal employees and residents, ensure the continuity and availability of essential civic services, and provide reassurance to an often confused and fearful public that we would eventually be okay. 16 challenging months and one municipal election later, Mayor Clark remains at the helm, providing leadership and reassurance at a very critical time. Now that the conversation is shifting from the crisis of today to the opportunities of tomorrow, what's on the horizon for Canada's greatest city? What priorities will drive our recovery and economic growth? And how can we help our businesses and neighbors thrive into the future? So to unpack these questions, we've gone straight to the top and we're very pleased to welcome His Worship, Mayor Charlie Clark, to today's Power Lunch. Mayor Clark was re-elected in 2020 for a second term, with a mandate to build a strong economic future where no one is left behind. His plans include continuing to foster innovative partnerships that build solutions to keep people safe, keep people working, and strive to make Saskatoon the most livable mid-sized city in Canada. We're very thrilled that Mayor Clark has agreed to meet with us today. Your Worship, thank you for being here. The floor is all yours. And you're on mute.
This is in solidarity with everybody else who's had the mute button. So thank you so much, Jason, and good afternoon to everyone, and to everybody who's out there zoomed up and ready to go today for the State of the City address. And this could very well be the very first State of the City address in history delivered by a mayor with an Elwood Flynn suit jacket on top and Hawaiian shorts down below. You'll never know. So it's been a while since I did one of these State of the City addresses, and we have been through a lot in the meantime, right here on Treaty 6 territory in the traditional homeland of the Métis. And by acknowledging this treaty territory, I want to acknowledge the ancestors of this land and all of the ancestors who have cared for and nurtured this city and provided us with what we have today. And I want to really thank you, Jason, and congratulations on your term at the Chamber, taking the helm at this challenging time, and to your whole team at the Chamber of Commerce for all of the work that you have done to pull this event together. And to everybody who is joining us on this call today, You are all leaders in the community, in all of your roles. To Ken Shovel-Dayoff, thank you for joining us from the provincial government. And I want to acknowledge all of my colleagues on City Council and the members of our city staff who are also joining today. I have been so proud to work with this group of women and men who've been a big part of all of the developments and the priorities that I will be talking about in this address. As you said, Jason, we live in an amazing city. And what a time it's been to be a leader, to be a parent, a neighbor, an employer, an employee, a friend. Our city has been deeply impacted by this pandemic. And I know that some have been hit much harder than others. Over 500 people in Saskatchewan have died of COVID, leaving behind grieving families and friends. I know many people who have contracted COVID are still suffering from the symptoms. We have frontline workers who've gone out day after day, putting themselves at risk to protect and serve the community, facing incredible stress. I've been talking recently with hotel operators and restaurateurs who've expressed to me the frustration in hearing we're all in this together when they in their industries are staring down losses of 90% of their business. And now another summer likely with reduced capacity. I was on a call just last week with many of the arts and cultural organizations as they shared the work that they're doing just to survive right now. But as you said, Jason, it feels like we're coming to a turning point. The vaccines are finally flowing fast and furious. Those millennials are storming in to get their pokes and take their selfies. As of today, my 12-year-old son is even eligible to get vaccinated. It's incredible. And this gives that sense of possibility that we've been waiting for on the horizon. And we have seen the tremendous strength of our community through this all. And so now it is an important time to look to our future and to use this as an opportunity to be ambitious for how we will rebuild after COVID, to become the city that we want to be in the future. So what I want to do is I want to start my remarks today by first asking all of you who are on the call to imagine 15 years from now. Just take a moment to think about the future. How old are you going to be 15 years from now? And what will you be doing? Where will you be living? Where will your family members be? Will you have grandchildren? Will your children and grandchildren be living here? And what will you care about in 15 years? So now let's imagine our city in 15 years, 2036. Imagine a city where there are 4 areas that define Saskatoon. Number 1, our downtown is a thriving destination for living, working, and entertainment. Number 2, we're one of the safest and healthiest communities to live in. Number 3, Saskatoon has become a global leader in research, technology, manufacturing, and creating the jobs that solve the world's problems. And number 4, our rich diversity is reflected throughout the leadership of our city. And young people from all backgrounds see very clear opportunities for themselves right here. I believe that committing to these 4 areas is what we need to do to build the city that will thrive for you, for your children, and for your children's children. And in preparing for this, we thought about what it would take to build this city. And I want to give you a sense of what can happen in 15 years to show that this is actually possible. And the best way I want to do this is to take you back 15 years. 15 years ago was 2006. I had just been elected city councilor for the first time, and there was a strong feeling in our city that many of our young people were leaving because they didn't see opportunity here. The population of our city was barely 200,000 people in 2006. There was no river landing, and we were just trying to come to terms with the inquiry into the freezing death of a young Indigenous man named Neil Stonechild. This was 15 years ago. I and we have been able to see how much can be achieved in 15 years, but also where we've fallen behind without focus and investment. Now, I want to make sure that we are making the right decisions in the right areas so that we're laying the groundwork for a strong future. So let's start with the first area I described, the downtown. To create a downtown that is a thriving destination for living, working, and entertainment. We've been talking about this in our office, and Michelle Beveridge, my chief of staff, who many of you know, she wants to be living in a downtown condo along the river in 15 years, meeting her friends in the entertainment district for food and going to world-class concerts, feeling safe walking to the library to pick up books. And she'd be really happy if one of her kids found a great job in what could be an emerging tech district in the downtown, and that they lived nearby with their grandchildren. So that's a vision for 15 years from now. Let's remind ourselves of the downtown 15 years ago, when River Landing was mostly undeveloped, scrubby riverbank. The traffic bridge was almost falling into the river. There was no Nutrien Wonder Hub and no Ramey Modern. Today, in the middle of those 15-year periods, we are well on our way to a vibrant downtown. Very soon, we will see the full River Landing site come alive, and K. Nasser Plaza will be unveiled. The new outdoor festival site is going to be started this year. Midtown Plaza's $84 million renovation is establishing itself as the preeminent shopping destination in our province. The largest residential building in the history of Saskatchewan is rising up at 25th Street today. We have close to 1,000 units of housing planned for the city center. The design process is well underway for the new Central Library, and we are moving ahead with the development of the new downtown entertainment district with an integrated bus rapid transit system. We're finalizing the site location and pursuing all of the options for how to finance the entertainment district without relying on property taxes. And we're also looking at how to design the district to reflect our community, from Indigenous placemaking to net zero design options. We know we will need solid partners to work with us to build this district. But as you can see, the pieces are already coming together to make downtown a destination for living, work, and entertainment. And it ties to the second area, which is community safety and well-being. Because I know that being a thriving city in 15 years means being a safe city, a city where streets, neighborhoods, and business districts are gathering places for people of all walks of life, where gangs have moved on because our young people are safe and are graduating from high school and finding opportunities here. A city where chronic homelessness is eliminated, where we have good housing, well-supported harm reduction programs, and integrated treatment and case management that prevents people from falling through the cracks, jointly led between Indigenous and non-Indigenous providers. We have been working very hard on these issues as a community. But the combination of increasingly toxic drugs, weapons, poverty, and inequality, and now the effects of the pandemic are making the crisis even worse. But there are key lessons emerging about what we must do to make progress. Toby Esterby is the current board chair of the Saskatoon Housing Initiatives Partnership, or SHIP. And through his work with Camponi Housing, he's been building innovative housing solutions for many of the hardest to house in our community. I asked him his vision for 15 years from now. And what he told me is that his vision is that vulnerable citizens will be welcomed into the social fabric of our city, that they call Saskatoon their home with a clear sense of pride and community-supported self-worth. I know that this is at the heart of what we all want. And this is what the Saskatoon Tribal Council's Sawehitotan project is built on. The Cree term Sawehitotan means to start by acknowledging the humanity of the people who are struggling. It doesn't refer to those people on the streets as clients or participants or problems. They're called relatives. And the project team works with them as though they are brothers, aunties, and daughters. And the project has had impressive results in the first 6 months. But it is only one piece of the integrated continuum of care that we need in our community. Another piece is to create more supportive housing options, housing plus supports, the supports that keep people stabilized and off the streets. And one example is Camponi Housing's Edwards Manor. This is a facility that has on-site psychologists, nurses, elders, and cultural support. And while this takes resources, it is still far less expensive than managing people in emergency rooms, ambulances, jail cells, and on the streets of our downtown and Riversdale districts. I know one of the people who has been housed in Edwards Manor for over a year now, after decades of being in and out of jail and on the streets. People who have been working with him for years cannot believe his success. What we need is 10 more Edwards Manors in our city. And this is what it will take to take the pressure off the lighthouse and deconcentrate the activity going on in the downtown and the city's core. To get there, we will access new federal housing dollars to build this capacity. And we need to strengthen working with the provincial government as a key partner, as they have been coming to the table in increasing ways, and I'm grateful for that. The Saskatoon Police under Chief Cooper are also changing how they work. They're integrating their response with crisis workers and community partners, Mobile Crisis, EGADS, the Saskatoon Tribal Council, and Ogiji'Towik Patrol Group. This is improving our coordinated response and building the continuum of care needed to break the cycles of gangs, addictions, and homelessness. And I also have been so happy to see how the Chamber, how business improvement districts and other business leaders are stepping up and coming to the table in new ways to support coordinated, integrated solutions to break these cycles. The path to a safer community is to create a coordinated continuum of care that addresses the pain and root causes that feed these cycles. The third area I want to talk about a vision for the future is for good jobs, where we will become a global leader in research, technology, manufacturing, and the jobs that solve the world's problems. I see Saskatoon as a magnet for talent and investment in good jobs, in the jobs that make a difference for people. Because we know the future of work is intertwined with the digital and tech transformations that are already underway, and that the best cities with the best job opportunities will be the ones that are making plans now for how to be connected cities. And a city that knows how to work in partnership with the tech community, post-secondary institutions, industry, and government. A city with equitable access to technology that makes sure that every kid from every background has the digital skills that they need to succeed in this world. 15 years ago, Aaron Janae, who now works with Siemens as an applications engineering manager, was a graduate in computer science at the U of S. He remembers that our tech ecosystem was small. It was mostly engineering and hardware companies, but there was potential. So he and many of his classmates stayed here in Saskatoon or returned here after going and cutting their teeth in Silicon Valley. They have become the founding members of a new generation of tech companies, now employing thousands of software developers, technical sales and marketing experts, and more. And he believes this is only the vanguard of an innovation economy that permeates every aspect of the city and economy, from online sales for our local restaurants to corporate headquarters connected to remote mining sites. I remember about 4 years ago, I was talking to Aaron, and he told me that the young people they're hiring at their company are making it clear that they are drawn to companies involved in solving the problems the world is facing. And this is what we have right here. Companies and universities working together in partnerships around the world to build the next generation of solutions in food production, sustainable resource development, green energy solutions, and medical solutions. We have the newly announced VITO National Pandemic Research Center, the Agri-Food Innovation Center, projects emerging like Project Ribbon. Western Economic Diversification has identified that of all of the cities in Western Canada, Saskatoon is the best positioned to build the value-added agricultural sector. And we have rapidly growing Indigenous economic development here. First Nations are choosing Saskatoon as the place to make millions of dollars of investments and growing companies right here. And we're also creating new jobs like in retrofitting, building design, and renewable energy, adapting to the global transition to a low carbon economy. It has become an imperative that we make this transition, or we risk being left behind as the global economy changes. Much of this future planning is in the economic growth strategy that we launched with Srita and other partners, including the Chamber, in March 2020, a week before the pandemic hit us. This strategy has it all. It lays out the path for our city to become a global leader, and based on the strengths that we already have. The final area I want to talk about is inclusion. The work we need to do to build a city where young people see themselves reflected in the diversity of leadership in every sector of our city. Saskatoon has all of the potential to be a diverse global city where all people are valued. Alberta Muembo was born in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and she moved to Canada 7 years ago with her family as refugees. She's a student, an interpreter, a community activist, and a talk show host. And her words to me about diversity and inclusion were this: She said, representation and leadership is crucial for the psychology of minorities. It was only after Barack Obama became president that many of us understood that the sky is the limit for anyone. The young leaders that I meet in our city, from the Black community, the Indigenous community, from communities of color, the LGBTQ2S community, they're incredible. And they are ready to shape our city in important ways, if our city is ready for them. And I know we're not there yet. Recently, a successful Indigenous professional moving to Saskatoon shared with me how many times people were nice to her on the phone when she phoned around to find housing. But then when she showed up to view it, she was told the place wasn't available. A father told me about his son who recently graduated from high school with honors here and was looking for a summer job in our city. After many attempts, he said to his father, "I wonder if I need to change my last name," because it was Arabic. People have moved here because they see our city as a place they can be safe and find opportunity to build their dreams. Whether they've moved here from a family farm, a First Nations reserve, a refugee camp, or an unsafe, congested city. Almost 80,000 people have moved to Saskatoon in the last 15 years. And each of these people brings hope, talent, and experience. But if thousands of them experience barriers to belonging and reaching their potential, our city will not thrive. And we also know that we're living in a time where there are strong forces wanting to sow the seeds of polarization, hate, and fear. The recent incidents of racism during this pandemic, or the appearance of white nationalist flags at the so-called Freedom Rally, those are signs of this. We will not let these forces win, because this is not who we are as a city. Let's remember the vision of former Muskeg Lake Chief Harry Lafond, Mayor Cliff Wright, and those leaders 33 years ago who chose to see strength in one another rather than difference, creating the first urban reserve in Canada and laying the foundation for another 7 urban reserves and hundreds of millions of dollars of investment here. Let's remember the early months of COVID when the Saskatoon Wildlife Federation offered their kitchen and thousands of dollars of support to the Saskatoon Tribal Council to help feed families. Or the barber shop where I got my haircut just this morning. And my stylist is Rochelle, and she's a Dene woman from La Loche. She works alongside Saeed, Pato, Stefan, and Tiffany. And she describes to me that the days where along the row of barbershop chairs, people are all talking and sharing the news of the day in Dene, Arabic, Spanish, and English, all at the same time. This is who we are. And I know that the city of Saskatoon needs to lead by example. And that's why our city council and administration are working to identify the systemic barriers that prevent people from being hired and promoted at the city. We need to ensure that our workforce is representative of the community from top to bottom. And it has been great to see the Saskatoon Chamber, Saskatchewan Chamber of Commerce, the NSBA, and SRETA all making diversity and Indigenous economic development a priority. And to see the Chamber's own Margot Orr chairing the local immigration partnership. Because this work requires us all to do our part, building across difference into strength and inclusion. So a lot can change in 15 years. Think about how far we've come since 2006. Think about where we're at today and how far we can go in the next 15 years. This last section of my remarks is about why I believe we can become the city we want to be, even in the challenging times that we're in. Because what we are offering the world is only growing. Our high school and university graduates today are seeing a future here and staying. People are drawn to our quality of life, to our beautiful city wrapped around the beloved Meewasin Valley, which is not only a model of conservation and sustainability, but also an oasis for our mental health. I personally have found that on many of my hardest days throughout this last year, getting out on the Meewasin trails has been a huge blessing, whatever the season. These are the strengths we can build on as we chart our path out of this pandemic. I want us to use what we've learned about ourselves and our strengths as we make decisions about this path. Saskatoon, we have proven yet again that our competitive advantage is our innovation and our collaboration. This is how we are going to become the city we want to be. And I have seen that innovation and collaboration at City Hall, with our business community, with our municipal neighbors, with our community partners. I want to give you examples of this. If someone had told me that we could shut down City Hall, send most of our staff to work from home, run all of our city council meetings virtually, reorganize our transit service, and make all of our departments COVID-proof in the course of 2 weeks, I would have said impossible. But we did it. I saw our city council and our staff lean in and figure it out. And we still managed to maintain a solid financial footing and bring in the lowest tax increase in 15 years, which I must recognize has been accomplished with critical supports from both the federal and provincial governments, who have recognized the importance of cities as central players in keeping our citizens safe and driving the recovery. Many of these adaptations will permanently improve how we run the city. And our city is also working differently and better with the business community. With the infill roundtable, we overhauled the development process to make downtown development easier. We're now working with the home builders to develop one of Canada's first property tax financed home energy loan programs. And we continue to work with industry partners to address climate change, creating jobs and reducing emissions. With our Saskatoon North Partnership for Growth, we've moved from thinking our competition is Corman Park, Warman, or Martinsville to see them as our partners who will enable us to better compete on a national and continental scale. And we've also seen this incredible adaptation and innovation with our community partners. We have seen an explosion of rec and cultural facilities like Gordie House Sports Complex, the Nutrien Wonder Hub, Ramey Modern, Shakespeare on the Saskatchewan, Wanuskewin, all built through innovative partnerships, incredible volunteer efforts, and outstanding philanthropy. This has all saved taxpayer dollars and created a city more attractive to families and to visitors. This strength of ours, being willing to try new ideas and to work together, and recognizing that relationship building is essential to progress, this is what leads us to be ambitious and to be successful in building a city that all of our children will feel proud to call home, where we've built a vibrant downtown, a safe and healthy community, a thriving economy with good jobs, and a city where everyone feels valued and supported to build their dreams. So I've told you how I see our city in 15 years. I want to know how this fits with your vision of our city. And I want to work with you to make it happen. And as for me, where will I be in 15 years? Well, I want to be on a patio in a beautiful downtown square, maybe with toddling grandkids, enjoying all that we have built, and to have no reason for anyone to talk to me about potholes or snow clearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, for your remarks. Most importantly, thank you for inviting us to cast our minds 15 years into the future after a year where we've been living 15 days and 15 hours at a time. It's exciting and compelling to actually cast our minds that far and start contemplating a different day. We'll let you take a sip of water and relax for a moment as I remind everyone how we'll get questions and comments into the mix today. For all of you who are participating, simply use the chat function and send a direct message to Margot Orr. Margot is going to funnel all of these my way, and we'll get as many of those questions and comments into the mix as possible in the time that we've got. So please do that. We'll look for them. And let's just get going. You know, Your Worship, you kind of touched on this a little bit, the year that was. Let's just start with that question. How are you? How's your family? And what has helped you sort of stay focused and positive over the last 16 months?
Well, I'm not gonna lie. I think like everybody, I've had good days and I've had bad days through this. And sustaining that sense of hope and optimism and focus on the future is something that I know takes all of us energy. And I've been empowered by the work with the community, work with my city council colleagues, work with our administration, work with the community partners who've been made it possible to sort of know that we can get through these challenging situations. And one of the blessings of the pandemic for me, and I mean, it's hard to say there's a blessing within a pandemic when there's so much challenge and struggle. And so I say that knowing that, has been that I've actually had more time with my family than any other time in my time as a city councilor or a leader. My oldest son is 16. he was barely a year old when I was first elected. And I now have 3 children, and I've had time to reconnect with them in a way that has been really, really important for helping me through the challenges of what every day has brought, whether it was the election or the snowstorm or all of the challenges of the pandemic. And the last thing I want to mention that has helped me a tremendous amount is I'm training for a half marathon now. I realized last summer that in order to stay healthy and sane, I needed to build a sort of a structured exercise regime. And I phoned up some friends and said, I need to schedule running. And I started to do regular running right through the winter. And it's led to now the ambition of joining in the Sask Marathon and doing a half marathon. And that is, and as I mentioned, along the river valley, it has been critical to helping sustain me through this.
Absolutely. Well, good on you. Good on you for taking up the challenge. I can be no help in that regard. I will only run unless I'm being chased by something bigger, faster, and stronger than me. Outside of that, I have no motivation to run a marathon, but good on you. And I'm sure you'll do great. Let's talk to some of the, let's speak to some of the issues that are typically top of mind for our members and the business community. And I want to start maybe just talking a little bit about the entertainment district. It's exciting to hear that it remains a very high priority of the city, and we've recently had a conversation even within the chamber with city officials around what that funding model might look like. Can you give us any update at all in terms of where we are in terms of sort of site selection and when that funding model will actually get determined and we can start to actually see some steady and real progress on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I recognize there's a feeling of anxiousness about getting some answers and clarity about that. I think one of the things that is especially driving that is a concern about Regina, and are we going, is because Regina is talking about an arena, we don't want to lose the race to Regina. And trust me, I don't want to lose the race to Regina in building the entertainment district. We have a team working very hard to secure and identify the site locations so that that is such a critical piece to getting the ability to put a project together, to know exactly what we're talking about in terms of costs and to know and understand how all the pieces of an entertainment district can fit together. And there's no question that the pandemic and some of the uncertainties it's created for landowners and others in the city has created it made it take longer to get the site location than we wanted, but we believe close and to a point where we can talk to the community about the options and the preferred place to do this. And the report that came out at City Council recently is very critical because we know we have a federal government that wants to fund transit, a provincial government that wants to fund an arena facility, a downtown entertainment district, some of these components that was made clear in the provincial election. And we also know that there's some really, really good lessons to learn from other cities about how you can use creative financing tools to make sure that you are not relying on property taxes as a primary way to fund this, because that will be a deal killer for this whole thing if it requires a huge property tax investment. So we are very focused on making sure that we make progress on this, that we have a clearer picture to be able to paint to our own community, to other levels of government that want to fund this. And we continue to engage with both the provincial and federal governments all the way along on our planning and development. And the other key piece is that we will need those partnerships in the community to do this, whether it's through using some of these financial tools that will have an effect on hotel rooms or on restaurant meals or on rental cars or on whatever those things are, but also private partners to build this facility. And we're looking at all options, including First Nations who potentially might want to invest because there's a lot of interest and others. So we're seeing some positive developments. It's a complicated piece to put together. It's a generational project for our city. I think we're really seeing some great signs and great interest in making progress sooner rather than later.
It's good to hear. I mean, as we talked about, it has the potential to be a huge economic stimulus project at a time where stimulus would be good. Without pinning you down
exactly what our downtown needs to help regenerate and to sort of be able to really make sure, as there's all of the uncertainty of the downtown with vacancies and people, not as many people working downtown, some of the safety issues, we know we need to create the momentum and the projects that will keep the heart of our city strong. And so that's one of the reasons I see this as really instrumental.
Yeah. Just on the subject of infrastructure projects, of course, the new library is sort of out of the chute in terms of a process, and now I think it's in the earliest stages of its functional design and stakeholder kind of needs assessment phase. But of course, the conversation around the library prompted a lot of questions around procurement and really the opportunity that public infrastructure projects offer, which is to sort of reinvest tax dollars back into the tax base by trying to procure local, by trying to get as many suppliers and vendors who are local and paying taxes here involved in the economic, upswing opportunity that these kinds of projects present. Can you just speak to this concern a little bit and how the city is approaching procurement, ensuring that sort of that best value or local procurement concept is top of mind?
Yeah, well, first of all, we've been working very hard as a city to make our procurement process more efficient, more transparent, more easy to access through a whole overhaul of our procurement, because that's so important to have a fair and level playing field. Even within our city, when we're spending millions of dollars, that we want to make sure that our procurement process is modernized and effective. And we have a team that's been doing very important work on that. The best value procurement conversation is also a very important one. And it is one that because of the new West Partnership Trade Agreement, you cannot just simply say, we're only going to contract this project out to a local business. It does not allow you to do that. So what best value though does is it says, well, it may be the case that you can't just simply put that in a provision in a trade agreement, but you can recognize that there are certain benefits that can be found by having local businesses that should be valued in the procurement process, because you have access to direct support, you have those communication benefits, you have a whole number of impacts that can actually make the relationship with the provider and the long-term impact of the service work better. And so we have been working with the NSBA has been working hard on this, the provincial government and Opportunity Saskatchewan has been working hard on this, and we've definitely learned quite a few lessons with some of our recent projects on procurement. I would say the Ramey Modern is one, for example, where we learned that having a design bid build process, the way it was set up on that, created some challenges that we now know that we can improve upon and use processes that do recognize the value that local companies can bring, and also create more efficiencies and effectiveness in terms of how projects are delivered. So this is a real priority that has a significant impact on the operations of the city.
You mentioned the festival site in your remarks, which was really interesting in terms of at least the concept and the plans around it. Can you just speak a little bit more about how this facility plays into your vision for the downtown plan, and then how it could relate or have any relationship to the future entertainment district?
It's probably been at least 15 years that the people who run festivals in our city, whether it's the Jazz Festival or the Children's Festival or the Taste of Saskatchewan event, have said we don't have adequate and sufficient facilities to be able to properly put on festivals in the downtown. And so there's been a lot of shoehorning and making things work in our existing sites. So that's why we took a step back and said, well, let's pick one site that we can put all of the right pieces in place that will be able to make it easier and more cost effective to put on some of these great festivals and events in our city. And it was actually not, when I would have guessed where the site would be, I didn't guess Friendship Park, which is where the site has ended up. But it was through a very deliberate process of evaluating and looking at all of the different places from Victoria Park all the way up to Kinsman Park, as to what was the best positioned place to be able to put on these festivals and events that would meet the needs of the event providers, who are a very critical part of this, and also have the access to transit, parking, pedestrian, cycling access, all of those components. And so that's the more that the picture was painted about how that site, in conjunction with the Kiwanis Park and River Landing, becomes a hub for a lot of these outdoor downtown festival activities. And so I see it very much fitting with the overall goal of creating a very vibrant and active downtown. And by creating the infrastructure to put on festivals better, I hope we see even more festivals and activities. And the relationship to the downtown entertainment district is still to be determined based on the ultimate location that entertainment district happens. But it feeds certainly on the development and activity of River Landing, and all of the opportunities that we have to create that downtown that we're looking for. And there will be opportunities for integration between the two, because we are trying to plan how all these pieces will absolutely fit together.
Let's on the subject of festivals and events and entertainment offerings, let's touch briefly on Prairieland Park. The city solicitors weighed in on this one. Council's weighed in on this one. What is the final word on from the city in terms of intervening in any way with Prairieland Park's plans to extend its offering?
Well, the reality with our arrangement with Prairieland Park is they have a 50-year lease that goes until 2045. So and they have made financial decisions, planning, investments based on the terms of that lease and the fact that they have a long-term lease. What has been asked of the city is for the city to step in, break the lease, and take over the land that's where Marquis Downs is, and to somehow change the outcome when it comes to horse racing. For the city to do that, it would essentially put us in a very precarious legal position where we'd be open to lawsuits because of the nature and the terms of that lease. So it is just not a viable or realistic option for the city to get involved in. We have not had a role in horse racing. Municipalities are not players in horse racing in other jurisdictions. I know there's been requests to try and get help for horse racing from the provincial government, at the tune of millions of dollars. The city is just a minor player in this whole operation, and we would bring on risk to the whole community if we did step in the way that some have been asking us to do. And so we need to be smart and realistic about when we have a role and when we don't have a role. And this is one of those situations where I know it's been a big and challenging situation for many who have had their lives staked in the horse racing industry. The city just simply is not the body that can change the outcome here.
Yeah. There have been questions raised around sort of certain zoning provisions that are provided to Prairieland. Prairieland has some ancillary businesses that support its activities there. And because of the location of those ancillary businesses, they benefit from sort of a tax shelter. Otherwise, they'd be paying property tax like the businesses across and down the street. We've raised these questions, and I know that there are discussions underway. Have there been any progress on the talks around zoning for the operation, Sports on Tap and other future ancillary businesses that Prairieland might host there?
Yeah, I mean, these are going to be important conversations, with any future plans for Prairieland and the facility. As I understood it, historically, Sports on Tap was provided a tax abatement because it was also associated with the horse racing industry and some of the off-track betting and some of those things. I think it's a legitimate question to look at and say, is it a fair to have a sports bar like that paying property tax or not paying property taxes when another sports bar in the community does pay property taxes? And as Prairieland sort of unveils and develops its plans, there are provisions where there does need to be city council involved in any new concept planning and any of the future developments. And I think these are going to need to be important questions that are discussed and explored, and to make sure that whatever the arrangement is there is fair and reasonable to other service providers in the community and other businesses in the community, and also that it does, have the best benefit overall to serve the community with the activities. But the city, that is where the city has a role, is to determine some of those provisions, not to determine what activities are going on at Prairieland. It is very clear that it is not City Council's role to pick and choose what should be going on. Whether or not there should be some adjustments around the zoning or taxation, I would say is about the extent of our role in that.
Okay, no, appreciate the clarification, and it's good that there is a real conversation happening around zoning and tax status for those kinds of ancillary businesses. I want to shift gears a little bit. Dare I say the word pivot? We're all sick of the word pivot, but let's be honest.
I didn't use it in my address.
I was very impressed. I was listening for it. I was going to hit the buzzer, the minute I heard it, but you held back. Good for you. But, let's be honest, businesses and organizations of all sizes have had to pivot this year to respond to, the immediate crises. I think what many have found is that they may plan on continuing with some of the changes they've introduced to their operations in terms of how they serve their customers. Let me hear from you. What aspects of the city's operations or approach do you think will change in light of COVID? How will things be different at the City of Saskatoon going forward from where you sit?
Yeah, well, this pandemic has had a huge impact on the city, and one thing I want citizens to know is how proud I have been to see our staff, and we have a relatively new senior leadership team. Jeff Jorgensen is our city manager, and there's quite a dynamic new group, a group of people who've risen up within the city, and also a group of people who we brought in from the outside, from private sector, leading the team. When the pandemic hit, I saw this group come together and break down silos between departments, go all in on saying, okay, this is totally uncharted territory. How do we work through this? But also, how do we take lessons from this crisis and make sure that we're not missing a chance to learn from it? And so everything from how and what we look at work from home arrangements, where there's opportunities to create work-life balance for our employees, but also be more efficient in how we manage our facilities and our office space, to the work that's happened to put so many more services online for people, because we had to reduce the amount that we could have people coming in and out of our offices. So whether it's building permits, business licenses, so many of the different ways that people rely on the city, we now are becoming more and more agile at being able to provide that service to people online, and reduce the amount of travel either our staff or citizens need to do to come down. We've run the entire city governance process through Microsoft Teams, which to me is incredible now. And I think it's a testament also to my colleagues on council who are on this. We've all, in order to be safe, adapted to that world, but we've been able to do it, and we had to learn, and we had to go through some really rough meetings, and we had, figure out how to use the chat versus, the, cameras on, cameras off, all those different things to also have a good governance process. And that, I think, will change and make us more efficient. We will go back to the chambers, but many meetings that have been happening where that require traveling and all those things, I think we will see happen more online. And the other big thing that has happened in the middle of the pandemic, the city of Saskatoon implemented Fusion, which is an entirely new approach to having one single software database platform to operate all of our systems. We were very outdated, running over 45 different software platforms that were not communicating to each other. People still had to fill out carbon copy leave forms if they wanted to go on vacation, and mail them around. We really needed to modernize our systems at the city. And in the middle of the pandemic, we made that shift, and we had a huge amount of staff. It was launched on January 4th of this year. It's going to have $40 million of savings in operational savings to the city in the first 6 years, and $9.7 million of savings a year from 2027. And in a lot of ways, the relationships and the partnerships and the work together that happened in the early days of the pandemic became critical for being able to do something like implement that ERP. And so I have seen very much the understanding that we need to embrace the change that this is bringing about and not miss the opportunity to change the way the city is going to operate. And I'm proud to say that I'm seeing that throughout the corporation.
Excellent to hear. I mean, the savings alone on the implementation of an ERP like that is massive. Certainly makes life a bit easier in terms of working together. Can you touch on any other cost-cutting measures that the city might have taken this year to just keep the budget in balance? As you well know, there isn't a business or household in the city that didn't have to take a look at its spending over the last year and make some hard decisions. Can you touch on some of those things and ways that you found savings to offset any lost revenue to the city?
Yeah, we've made changes to everything from any car allowance provisions that are there for the city to the way we have our cell phone contracts. We had layoffs within City Hall last year, both for all of the people who are seasonal workers involved in pools and in recreational facilities and all of those things. But we also went further and had a whole series of layoffs that we gave to staff that where their work just wasn't there, especially in those early days of the pandemic. We have implemented a discretionary hiring freeze, a discretionary spending freeze throughout the city, and made sure that we are taking as many steps as we can to reduce our costs while still needing to run the entire city. There's very few parts of the city of operations that were not needed, other than when we closed our facilities, like our leisure facilities. All of the work we've been doing in planning and development and building standards and in garbage collection, street sweeping, we found through the year that we realized that we could cut back and scale back on how much street sweeping or park maintenance we did, but people were all stuck at home in a city where under stress, and council decided, we think it's important that we still make sure that we keep our city looking good while we're going through this. And that created some challenges to be able to do that with social distancing in place and not having people be able to travel in vehicles together and some of those things. But we managed to be able to pull it off. And then we got hit with the biggest snowstorm in 50 years, which was a huge challenge to our budget. And as I said, in the end, through all of those cost-saving measures and some very help from the provincial and federal governments with the MEAT program and the Safe Restart program, we've been able to bring in the lowest tax increase in 15 years in 2021. So we are in a good fiscal position to build out of this pandemic. And we know that people want to know that the city is doing our part in finding those cost savings, and I take that very seriously.
Excellent. On the technology modernization theme, just a question from the chat here. Does the city plan to implement digital distributed ledger technology over the next 5 years to increase engagement between the municipal government and the community? This is the big data thing, I think, that a lot of folks talk about, where data is available from the city to inform community-wide decisions and planning.
I think I haven't heard of digital ledger technology, but if it's open data, then
yes, I think
I would say this, that in the last term, a big part of what we were doing as a city is getting those internal systems working better and improving things like getting ready for the ERP and modernizing the way our own software and programs are working. This term, I see that it's an imperative that we turn our attention to those public-facing, the digital strategy. And as I said in my remarks, to make sure that we're building a truly connected city, and open data and the opportunities that provides is one of those things. And so we've been implementing some tools, even like the waste and recycling app you can get on your phone, or the report a pothole, or a lot of stuff we've made much easier to get online, like I said, with building standards and so on. But the open data conversation opens an opportunity to do things like app development and to have local companies being involved in tracking some of the metrics of the operations of the city. How often are people putting garbage bins out or collection bins out, or what are the activities in parks, that we can learn from and to see what's happening, or the transit use more efficiently, so we can plan around all of those programs. And we have been talking, even just in the last month, with some of the tech companies and startups who are already have a lot of the capacity to do some of this work, to see how we can partner as a city with them in the same way we've done with the university, to use the skills and knowledge of those who, whether it's in the university or the industry side, to work with the data that we have to be able to create opportunities for jobs and employment in those companies locally, but also create better services for citizens. And I believe it's imperative that we make sure that we're doing that as a city.
Question, you touched on this in your remarks. You touched on the Saskatoon project that's being led by Tribal Chief Mark Arcand, but you've had a very, very big role in convening the tables where the province and Tribal Chief and the city and other stakeholders have sort of come together, realized some early success, and it was very encouraging to see some renewed investment in the program. But downtown safety, perceptions of safety, these are very real concerns. You work downtown, we work downtown. We see what's happening, and it's very concerning for people who have businesses downtown, who need a safe environment for their customers to frequent those businesses. Just talk to us a little bit about some of the other steps or initiatives that may be underway here to really promote personal safety, shore up confidence and perceptions around personal security downtown, ensure that this core remains vibrant and a welcoming place.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest concerns I have right now about our city and our community, and the anxiety that I know is there. I mean, if you think of, and when I talk to downtown business owners or residents, if we're in a time when there's already all of the stress of the pandemic, some of the shops, restaurants, hotels, in the downtown are facing some of the toughest economic conditions they have in decades, and at the same time we have a growing amount of homelessness and addictions. We've seen the overdose crisis and the impact of really destructive drugs like crystal meth, creating behaviors and activities that are creating safety concerns. And we're seeing increased vandalism and graffiti and lots of these issues. So it's a significant concern. The importance of the Saskatoon project is that what it has done, it's created a place where all of the community partners are together, and we have the provincial government, including both the Ministry of Social Services and Health, at the table, talking and working together to say, okay, what is happening? Where are people falling through the cracks? What's leading people to returning back into the streets and into the downtown over and over again? At the same time, we have a multi-departmental city approach right now, meeting as we speak, to work around some of the issues arising around the lighthouse. As with warmer weather, we're seeing more garbage, more trash, more people just kind of hanging around with nowhere to go. And we know that is not tenable. As I still am committed to working with the lighthouse and the province, this is underway to create a second location for some of the activities at the lighthouse and to reduce the pressure on that facility, which has too much stuff happening all in one place. So we need to have, as I said, several more of the facilities like Edwards Manor that have been shown to be effective at getting some of the people who are most chronically on the street off the street and stabilized. And we need to have that sort of the continuum of care to get them there. In the meantime, right after this address, we have the Board of Police Commissioners meeting, and we have an update from Chief Cooper on a downtown safety strategy. The alternative response officers that have been hired as an additional service out there in the community that can help to address some of these they are focused on the downtown, and they've started last week, and we're already seeing and hearing from some businesses the impacts that we're seeing as a result of that. There will be a whole strategy around policing in downtown and Riversdale, both of them together, to provide a more responsive, relational-based, consistent policing presence for these businesses while we work on some of these other longer-term solutions. And so, as I said, it's something that while we still don't have as many people downtown working in office buildings, especially, and it feels more empty, we have a lot of work to do to create and increase that safety as we work on some of these long-term solutions, which I wish we had more quicker results on, but are complicated. And the city has a limited direct authority over the change. So I can convene and work towards those solutions, but we really need those partners to come to the table to help. And thank you, Jason, and and Brent Penner from the Downtown Bid. I'm seeing more and more alignment between business leadership, police leadership, Saskatoon Tribal Council, as you said, the city, all saying, let's not make this an us versus them approach. Let's work together, figure out what systems can be in place to better look out for people, and as a result, create better safety in these core districts.
For sure. Let's take a sip there. The next question is sort of about development and investment in the city. We've all heard of NIMBYism, not in my backyard, kind of attitudes around new developments or developments within existing infrastructure. A lot of talk in the business community about a yes in my backyard mindset, which is about having an openness to this, which is really key to achieving some of the growth goals you've talked about. Often when these development proposals sort of come to the table for a decision, they end up running up against an 11th hour sort of NIMBYism mindset. After having invested, as you well know, considerable time and financial resources to get it to that stage, what can be done to reduce the risks and costs for proponents or investors behind these projects as they seek approvals and ultimately want to get them off the ground?
Well, first of all, I would say this city council has, I think, been very forward-thinking and ensuring that when we say we're going to have these growth goals, we're going to follow through and work to support development to happen. So we've seen over 1,000 units of development approved in the city center. Many of them have faced some of the NIMBYism. Sometimes we've been able to improve and adjust and see design changes and so on to help make sure that the developments are fitting into neighborhoods. But what we need, and you and I actually, Jason, worked on the Broadway 360 project back in 2008. And what we learned through that conversation is that what we need is actually more certainty for both neighbors and residents in communities and the development community. So the corridor growth planning initiative that's underway, that's built around looking at where are the higher density corridors that will have transit and other services in place. Also create an important conversation to say, what's the appropriate zoning around and along these areas where we want to drive density into areas where we also have services. And then instead of on a one-off basis dealing with project after project that has to be rezoned, we essentially tell the community, we're going to see and have higher density developments there. So if you're a developer looking to develop, this is where we're going to be able to create the zoning where it won't require these one-off neighborhood battles. And it also shows neighborhood, because what we hear over and over again when there's a project to say, well, once you approve this project, that means the whole neighborhood is going to become higher density. And what we need to do is to say, no, this is the boundary around that. These projects will go here, and then the single family character of a neighborhood that's in the core of it will be protected. So I think we are already making progress in the sense that we've been able to see and develop and go through the development process and improve a number of these. But the next step is to create that certainty by creating zoning districts that make it clear to everybody where higher density belongs.
Yeah, excellent. And you know, that Broadway 360 exercise that you mentioned was a real eye opener, and one of the first opportunities I think I'd certainly had to sort of participate in a discussion like that. It can be very stressful on both sides, and providing the kind of certainty that you're talking about, where the playbook is understood on both sides, really does help mitigate some of the risks and conflict that typically comes with these kinds of projects. I want to shift attention to the environmental stewardship front, Your Worship. The city set some very ambitious targets through its low emissions community plan that was released pre-pandemic. It was in 2019. What's the current status of this plan, and are we still tracking to achieve the 50% reduction of emissions by 2050 that it calls for?
Well, what the plan has done is sort of basically say, if we were to achieve 80% by 2050, this is what it would take to get there. Now it's a question of what steps can we take that are affordable, that are effective in making that change, that set us on the path to be able to show leadership in this area. And as I said in my comments, even the Saskatchewan Chamber of Commerce this year put out a document on how do we create the transition to a low carbon economy, because it's no longer a choice whether we do it. It's a necessity that we do it. And as they say, it's not a simple exercise. This is something that will be challenging. We'll have to listen to one another. We'll have to pay very close attention to the impacts on industries and jobs, but find the way forward. So what we're doing as a council is taking steps around specific things that we can do, like the home energy loan program, which will both improve emissions of housing. It'll be a pilot that we can hopefully scale up to commercial buildings and multifamily buildings, while also creating jobs and driving innovation in building design and in these sectors within our community, and to have success there. In the last federal budget, in the last round of infrastructure dollar announcements from both the federal and provincial governments, we have investments in our building a solar plant at Parcel M, which is over by Circle Drive near Montgomery neighborhood. We are going to be in expanding our landfill gas project, which generates power and revenue back into the city by reducing the amount of emissions coming out of our landfill. We've got Recovery Park underway, which is a $60 million project to make our ability to sort out and steward our waste more effectively. And we also are working towards the electric vehicle charging networks that we need in our city through our own operations as a city, and also in partnering with industries to find a way to do that, because we know that is the way that these industries and economy are going, and we don't want the city to be left behind if a lot of these technologies change and we haven't been making the steps to be prepared for that. And so the way I see it is we need to be practical, but also bold in terms of finding who and where those industry partnerships are for us to make progress, so that as the expectations of our citizens and the world change, they look to Saskatoon and say, okay, this is a forward-thinking place where we're going to invest, where kids want to be part of, because they see that we're taking our steps to be responsible and to do our part when it comes to climate change and the low carbon economy.
Thank you. Question about sort of fostering Indigenous economic reconciliation in the country, in the city. It's a priority focus for our chamber. Organizations like the Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business have come out with costing to talk about the price of inaction in terms of not addressing the gaps between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, their participation in the economy, their roles as business owners, entrepreneurs, founders. Nationally, it's estimated to be something in the neighborhood of $100 billion in lost GDP. When I think about our city, it would be significant for sure. From your vantage point as mayor, how do you think we're doing as a city on the reconciliation front? And more specifically, what do you think we need to do to bridge the economic gap here between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people in Saskatoon and facilitate greater participation in the economy?
Well, this is a big question to try and answer in a short period of time, but certainly, the areas that we're seeing some of the most success are the way that Edmonton is still right now trying to establish its first urban reserve in that city. Winnipeg has, I think, 2. We are up to 8 in our city. well established, and what we're seeing as a result is millions of dollars of investment in our own city as a result. If you look at the Muskeg Lake Reserve out at Packham Place, they now have Lakeside Medical Center, multi-million-dollar medical facility on there. They have the headquarters of SIGA, again, $40 million, I think, construction, many jobs that have come to our city. Those jobs could be in Regina, or they could be in PA or somewhere else. They've come here as a result of us doing this. We have Kakawishtahow First Nation working towards a major investment in the land development up near the airport on the east side of Hampton Village. I'm meeting with First Nations leaders on a regular basis who want to invest millions of dollars in our city because they see this as a place where we're wanting to work with them and to create those opportunities. We have been doing work and learning from the mining industry on Indigenous procurement and on looking at how do you create ways to incentivize the companies that we're working with and support the development of Indigenous-owned businesses that frankly have not had as much runway to get developed and established in the economy previously. And I believe it's reasonable to say, how do we make sure that we create the conditions for those companies to grow and develop and to create employment for people here? Those are where we're having successes. I think where we need to do more work is for all of, whether it's, and the city of Saskatoon is really taking a more aggressive look at this, but all companies to look at their own hiring practices, to look at their own internal operations, to say, what can we be doing to making sure that we're creating those opportunities for young Indigenous people to be able to succeed within the city, within our companies. I hear too many examples of people not even getting a look because of their name or because of their skin color within the community. And what we need more and more of the kids growing up in our city to look around and see that that people like them are doctors, are lawyers, are board members, are city councilors, are in leadership positions within the city. And that's with the Indigenous community, that's with the Black community, that's with the South Asian community, that's all of these, the LGBTQ2S community. Because I'm hearing too many examples where people are not feeling like they're able to contribute. And those costs we're talking about, there's still far too many young Indigenous people, especially ending up in jail rather than graduating high school. And that is a cycle that is terrible for them, terrible for their families, and it's terrible for the city because it leads to more crime and alienated youth. So I think we have a lot of work to do to create the culture as a city where we continue to support and identify how to create opportunity for these whether it's through our own companies or through partnerships, to really make the progress that we really need to make in the years to come here.
Thank you, sir. Well, looking at the clock, it looks like that's about our time for today. We'd love to keep you here for the afternoon. There's no shortage of questions and comments that we'd love to put to you. But on that note, we just want to thank you for your time today, and certainly want to thank you for your time and availability whenever we reach out from the chamber. Like you, we value those opportunities to work together and pursue great opportunities for Saskatoon. So thanks for making yourself so accessible and available to us. We really do appreciate that. I want to thank today's Power Lunch sponsors. Our promoting sponsors were CN and Campotex. Our partner sponsors were McClellan DeBoucher Chartered Accountants and Par Auto Body. Everyone, I'll just invite you to log off now. We'll ask Mayor Clark and any media present to stay on the line for a short media scrum. And everyone else, you're free and clear to get on with the rest of your day. Take care of yourself, take care of those around you, and we'll see you at another Power Lunch again really soon. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.